Everyone, this is Andrew Lennon, and we're going to talk about do you believe in God, which is a little bit different than does God exist. I can go through evidence that I've seen that God exists, some really good evidence. And of course, you can see, many people have answers of evidence that they've seen. Okay, people that have come back from the dead, miracles that have been performed, healing of the sick, and all that. Perfectly legitimate, good, definitely good evidence. But I want to talk beginning in the place where you're just beginning to learn, because you don't have necessarily all of the scriptural knowledge. You don't necessarily have a well-established relationship with God. You don't have faith that's really strong. And so, you don't necessarily have all the experience to draw from. You don't necessarily have all the resources of understanding how to resonate with God, how to understand His will, how to understand how to bring yourself closer to Him to be ready for what He has to offer. So let's begin at the very, very beginning. Okay, and let's begin in a sinful state. Okay, where you've been committing a lot of sin. Okay. Oftentimes I'll hear from that perspective that they don't believe that God really cares or will ever care about them. Feeling that they don't feel God's presence. Sometimes they'll say anymore, sometimes they've never felt God's presence, or that they've never received revelation, they've never seen any reason to believe God exists. Let's begin there. Okay. Some of the things that we know about God is that He is omniscient. He is all wise. And so He has wisdom for us. He's the best mentor. So obviously, we can tap into that kind of mentorship. We can get our lives back onto the right path. And so how do we do that? Well, when we're not on speaking terms with God, we have to turn to those who have spoken with Him, who do speak with Him. Okay? It can be a little bit hard because many people will claim that they have the truth, and they'll claim for a lot of various reasons. And so just accepting that somebody says this is what God said isn't the best approach. We have to begin from, I guess you call it, a moral decency approach, just a basic goodness approach. God expects a lot more than just basic goodness, but we can begin there. Okay, the basic things that we know from the Ten Commandments, right? Love God, don't worship false gods. Now, understanding all these things is a video in itself, okay? But if you just take the most basic things from these messages, honor your parents, don't steal, don't lie, don't kill, okay? Go through all those 10 commandments. Are we living true to those kinds of things? Now, I said it can get a little bit more complex, depending on, for instance, if we're a soldier, what does don't kill mean, right? Thou shalt not kill. But I think we can all have a fairly good intuition that we should probably avoid killing in general, right? It's best, you think you want to kill somebody, let's think about that a little bit, right? Let's not just go with the gut reaction. Okay, you think you want to steal from someone, you can justify it, and maybe hold back on that a little bit and rethink that. Okay, God's given these commandments for very good reasons. So, don't look upon your neighbor's wife with, coveting her. That commandment goes back to the commandment about cleave unto your wife and none else, right? Become one flesh and be unified. So, we learn basic truths about marriage and about fidelity, about morality. We learn that, when we do that, we're becoming bonded in God's spirit of matrimony. Okay, God's considering us now responsible to live up to that commitment to multiply and replenish the earth. This is obviously a very important part of his word, because he included it in the very beginning of Genesis. And we can go into why it's important later. But the important thing is, to stay focused on, how do we believe in God? Well, we begin by hearing these words that have been spoken already and by testing them. Is it a valid principle that we should walk with honor at all times? That we shouldn't dishonor ourselves by doing things that are, let's just say, immoral. Okay, I think a lot of people know what that means. And obviously we are constantly learning what moral means, because we're not omniscient. We don't know everything. So we turn to the scriptures, we turn to prayer, revelation, and we try to put things in place to keep us from deceiving ourselves, from convincing ourselves that God told us that it's okay to have sex outside of marriage. Okay. People do try to convince themselves of that, of sin, and that telling themselves that sin is right and good. So just because obviously you think God told you something doesn't mean he actually did. It can mean that you deceived yourself. So, in future videos, we can talk about that. Let me know what you think is interesting to talk about. But there are ways that we can make sure that we're not deceiving ourselves, make sure that the things that we're receiving are beyond what we could deceive ourselves, beyond what we could tell ourselves, things that could not originate from us, that must originate from omniscience. It's a really interesting topic, and I'd love to talk about that. Okay, so from that position, that's the first thing I say is find out what God's will is, what his law is, because he has a law. He's all wise and he knows how to mentor us, how to direct us to be our best. And then follow his law, follow his will. Listen to the mentor. If you want any good advice about career, find a mentor in the career that you want to go into. Make sure it's a good mentor, that they're successful, and then follow them. Do what they say. And it's the same thing with God. Okay, do what he says and learn from him. Learn by doing. Okay. So that's the beginning of establishing a good relationship. Pray, talk to him. Don't assume that you understand where he's coming from. This is omniscience. He knows past, present, and future. He already knows what you're going to do. He already knows the end of time. Okay, he already knows what you're going to ask him. You haven't even asked him, he knows. Okay, the prayer is not really for us necessarily. It's for you. Did I say that right? The prayer is not necessarily for God. It's for you. So, because obviously God's omniscient. So, do I believe in God? I'll tell you why I believe in God. In the beginning, I felt his spirit work on me as I prayed. I felt directed to things that I knew I could not have known by myself. Things that were completely beyond my experience and knowledge and understanding. This has continued for my entire life. I have had revelations of things many years in advance, of things I couldn't have possibly known, even of things that I could have maybe partially known, but not completely known. Okay. I healed the sick. I've seen God's miracles. I should say, I've seen miracles in the flesh. I've seen miracles in the scriptures. Okay. So in all those things, they're not necessarily direct evidence of God, but I've come to believe in God because I've seen his wisdom. I've been enlightened by him and guided by him. I've been told things that only God could know, things that I didn't even know myself at the time. Okay. So I began with those kinds of things. Later, I continue to see all those miracles, but then I see things for myself. I get answers more directly. Okay. I see God. I see his hand in the world. Even things I don't want to believe. And that's one of the bigger things that you can take as a sign that this likely came from God, is because you don't necessarily want to believe it, then why would it come from you? Okay. So let's just stop with that for now.